Yeah. The reason why my father decided to come to Hawaii was for a better life, just as the current immigrants from Honduras and all those areas are trying to come to America. My father had dreams of coming to Hawaii, making a lot of money, and be able to send money back to his family. He was the oldest of the Shoraishi family. And so he looked for a better life and enough money so he could send money back. Evidently, there are a lot of Japanese being recruited to come as immigrants. The MA company, the Maui Agricultural Company, had residential homes or plantation homes for all of the workers, and they had developed these homes, and so we had several villages. One was called the Filipino camp, and there were all the Filipinos from the Philippines would come. And then we had the Japanese camp, which is a camp that I was in, Neshua camp. And then across the government road, I don't know why we called it government road, because today we would just call it across the street or the highway. But anyway, there was another village set across the government road. And the people in that area were of a higher class. In other words, the parents were office workers or they worked in stores. But the Neshua camp and the Filipino camp, they were all true immigrants, and they worked strictly in the sugarcane fields. My father would get up early in the morning, and then he would start a fire, and that was to cook the rice so he could take to work for lunch. And my mother would get up early, and because we didn't have a stove, we didn't have rice cookers at that time. So she cooked rice, and then she packed the rice up in canteens. The bottom one would be this high with rice, and then the top portion would be for the okazu or the meat or the vegetables, whatever you call that, to go with the rice. We didn't have bottled water at that time, so I don't know what my father drank to wash down his lunch. Maybe he drank from the irrigation ditches. I really don't know. But every morning he'd get up early, and they would meet at designated areas, and this MA company would send a truck, and they would all be hauled into the back of the truck, just like the way the cows and the horses are travel, except you didn't have seat belts, so I have no idea. I suppose if the truck hit something, everybody will fly out of the back of the truck and be killed. But they worked from sunup to sundown. But I remember growing up, going through Plantation Row, in which you had these big, fabulous homes, and they were for the Lunas or the supervisors, where we lived in smaller wooden homes, and we didn't have any bathrooms, but we had outhouses in which 4 families used the outhouses. The outhouses was divided into 4, 1 each for each family. So technically, we could be using the outhouse with all 4 family units at any point in time. And there were 2 holes, one big one for the adults and a small one for little children. Okay? Yeah. And I didn't know how badly they were being treated until there were some talk about quiet talk about going on a strike. I had no idea what a strike meant. I had no idea what ILWU stood for, but my father would come home and would discuss things with my mother, and then I could overhear my mother saying, "Tamate" and "koraero" means be quiet and hold it all in. In other words, I don't think she was brave enough to agree to the strike, but my father was adamant because he said he does not appreciate the fact that these lunas or the bosses or the supervisors riding on the horses would go down the rows of the sugar canes, and if you were a little slower, they would crack this whip and tell you, "Son of a bitch." She said, "I am not a son of a bitch. Nobody is a son of a bitch." I remember my dad saying that precisely. So basically, from early on, he was for human rights. And so the strike went on, and we didn't have any food because we didn't have any money. But every once in a while, when my father attended the union meetings, he would come home with a bag of rice. So the union members evidently gathered enough money to give bags of rice to each of the union members. And the strike did last quite a bit, for quite some time. But in the meantime, my father was very creative, he was ingenious, and he made a garden of string beans, green string beans, yellow string beans. He had gobo, soybeans, lettuce, beets, you named it, all the vegetables, even to a point in which he raised the bamboo for the bamboo shoots, and he had sweet potatoes in the backyard. He raised chickens, he raised rabbits, and he raised ducks, and that was our protein. We didn't even know what meat was at that time. And my father was, if he had been today, he probably would be an engineer, because he architecturally built chicken coops that was sort of slanted. So when the chicken laid an egg, the egg would roll down. And also he had this gallon of water, which was my job to fill it up every single day, and to change the water and to put it into each one of the chicken coops. The chickens had their own, there were about 2 chickens to 1 section of this long coop that he had made. And so technically he was very smart. He stood for human rights. And after the strike was over, I can see that the working conditions had improved. They were no longer called son of a bitches. And in addition to that, we also ended up having to pay a small portion of rent subsidy, okay, and electricity. Prior to then, everything had been free, but my father felt it was better to pay a little bit for the working conditions. Yeah. Later on, MA Company went under, and they merged with HCNS, which is the Hawaiian Commercial and Sugar Association, which just in recent years also went under. You no longer have these huge sugar plantations. So, yeah, the plantation days, although we were very poor, I didn't realize how poor we were until I'm much older. But at that time, we didn't know how poor we were. We had a nice time running around and in all the open spaces, and catch all the black soot that came off when they burned the sugar canes, and we thought it was an enjoyable time. Every month my father used to send money. I remember them walking all the way to the post office. My job was to walk a mile to the post office, and my mother would make a money order, because that was the only means of sending money at that point in time. Made a money order and sent money back to Japan. I think that was the first time that I have ever realized that that was the unionization, beginning of the development of unions here in Hawaii. Later on in my professional year, I also became a union member, but I often think back to the time when it first started with MA Company with my father. My father was a firm believer in the strength of the unions. He felt that we should all get together and go and aim for a positive goal that will benefit all of them. I know today there are a lot of people who took the companies to the unions to court about having to pay the fee. I look at it as a small fee that you pay for the protection of all the workers. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the union. I've seen what the union did for our parents, for the poor, illiterate immigrants that came from the Philippines and from Japan, and how they improved their working conditions. I had no idea that the Lunas rode on horses up and with the workers if they were slow. That would not ever happen today, but at that time, those poor immigrant workers tolerated that. As my mother said, damate gamam, be quiet and hold it all in. That is not right. My mother was not right. My father was right. He was always behind you for the human rights. Yes. Because of the way the plantation workers were treated, the first generation of those immigrants have accomplished quite a bit. And then of course it was helped by the coming of the World War II with Japan. And as a result of that, and the GI Bill benefits that these veterans had, many of them became very famous. You have Dan Inoue, you have Sparky Matsunaga. You also have your great uncle Clinton Shiraishi. They did a lot. Nadao Yoshinaga, they all ran for offices, and they did a lot of legislation. Today, as a Hawaii, if you retire from the state of Hawaii, you do not have to pay Hawaii state tax. This bunch of professionals, Najo, Yoshinaga, Sparky Matsunaga, Dan Inoue, they made it sure that at the legislature that no Hawaii resident upon retirement will be taxed. In addition to that, what they also did was your Social Security benefits that's withheld for your medical, your Part B portion that's deducted, the state of Hawaii reimburses each member at the end of each quarter the percentage that was taken out from your Social Security benefits. These benefits are appreciated by the retirees in the state of Hawaii. I always think of the hard workers of Najo, Inoue, Matsunaga, and and my brother Clinton Shiraishi. They have all done a lot of service to the state of Hawaii, and I really truly believe that it was the way our parents were being treated in the sugarcane fields and perhaps pineapple fields too.